Greetings, true believers, and welcome to another mesmerizing episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This week's tale begins with a man named Quentin Beck. Born in California and raised in New York, Beck grew up enamored with movies and special effects. His mother, Henrietta, died when he was young, and he and his father, Elmore, lived in a rundown apartment on 34th Street in Manhattan. During this time, his only real friends were his neighbor, Betsy Schneider, and his cousin, Maguire Beck. In fact, it was Maguire's father, Vincent, that gave Quentin an old movie camera that he would play with as a child. However, Beck's own father was unsupportive and emotionally abusive. Elmore Beck neglected his son, spending most of his time talking to his deceased wife and belittling Quentin. As a result, Quentin Beck grew up with a deep desire for respect and recognition. Even after becoming a successful Hollywood stuntman and special effects artist, he still felt underappreciated working behind the scenes. Furthermore, his career was ruined after an on-set accident during a stunt he was coordinating left a leading actor severely burned. With his options limited, he and several other like-minded colleagues turned to crime. For their first outing, Beck and the others joined forces with the criminal inventor Phineas Mason, better known as the Tinkerer. Disguised as aliens to hide their true motives and identities, Beck and his team aided Mason in the theft of military and industrial secrets. These efforts were soon thwarted thanks to the intervention of the costumed crime fighter Spider-Man, but Beck's trickery allowed he and Mason to escape capture, fooling Spider-Man into thinking they really were aliens. However, Quentin Beck was fascinated by the Spider-Man and decided to use him as the target for his next scheme. As a part of this plot, he crafted a costumed identity of his own, utilizing his special effects expertise and stunt training. To test his abilities and add to his arsenal, Beck arranged a meeting with his friend and idol, an old special effects artist named Ray Bradhouse. After knocking Bradhouse out with a powerful sleeping gas, Beck searched his basement to learn his secrets. Beck's suit allowed him to leap around with ease, using a special sonar to see through illusions and dodge booby traps. However, Beck was shocked to find that a demonic monster featured in one of Bradhouse's films seemed to be real. With the acid in his gauntlet driving the monster back, Beck was able to escape, albeit with the assumption that the creature was just another illusion. Beck never learned that the creature was a real demon that Bradhouse had foolishly summoned in his youth, and that its unexpected disappearance was the work of Dr. Strange. Confident in his abilities, Beck proceeded with his plan, impersonating Spider-Man during several robberies to tarnish the vigilante's reputation. After this, he appeared at the offices of the Daily Bugle newspaper in full costumed regalia as the ostensibly heroic Mysterio, declaring his intent to defeat the criminal Spider-Man once and for all. Publisher J. Jonah Jameson threw his support behind Mysterio, and in his first encounter with the wall crawler, he indeed appeared to gain the upper hand as Mysterio's gases interfered with the hero's vaunted spider sense. Ultimately, Spider-Man escaped that confrontation, with Mysterio claiming victory. The next day, Mysterio was praised as a true hero, but in his next encounter with Spider-Man, the wall crawler convinced his overconfident opponent to reveal his secrets. Spidey cleverly recorded Mysterio's entire confession, proving his own innocence. Furthermore, better prepared for Beck's illusions and trickery, Spider-Man was able to defeat Mysterio the second time around. After his initial defeat, Mysterio became a long-standing staple of Spider-Man's rogues gallery, even joining forces with Dr. Octopus and several others to become a founding member of the Sinister Six. He briefly reconnected with his childhood friend Betsy Schneider, and a relationship began to develop between the two, but it soon became clear that Beck had grown increasingly unhinged as he embraced his villainous new persona. He became convinced that Betsy was only getting close to him as a way to further her career as a writer, and he rejected her. It seemed Mysterio was going to kill Betsy, but she was saved by the intervention of Joe Smith, a stuntman and actor who before this was temporarily endowed with super strength, but at this point was just a guy named Joe. Naturally, Spider-Man arrived on the scene to rescue Joe from Mysterio. Beck has also used several false identities over the years, the most noteworthy of which being Dr. Ludwig Reinhardt. He first used this name to pose as a psychiatrist as part of a scheme to unearth Spider-Man's secret identity. However, it was J. Jonah Jameson who discovered that Reinhardt's credentials were phony, and he inadvertently prevented Spider-Man's identity from being exposed. After several encounters with Spider-Man, Beck was sent to jail once again. His cellmate was a former stuntman, Daniel Berkhart, who Beck used to work with, but had been blacklisted for continually showing up to work drunk. Beck took Berkhart under his wing, revealing his secrets while plotting to use him as a patsy. Beck soon faked his death while escaping from prison, making it seem as though the guards had shot him during the attempt. Once he was out of jail, Berkhart adopted the Mysterio identity exactly as Beck had planned. Jameson then hired the new Mysterio to take down Spider-Man, much like the original had attempted. When Berkhart was busted and arrested, he demanded that Jameson hire him a lawyer. However, Jameson instead skipped town for a while, leaving Berkhart to his fate. With the world convinced he was dead, Beck again took the name Dr. Reinhardt, this time as part of a nursing home scam, in which he tricked the sick and elderly into signing their belongings over to him before they passed. When this scheme was also uncovered by Spider-Man, Beck reclaimed the identity of Mysterio. He wasn't done with Berkhart, however, and Beck began tutoring him once more, along with two others. An enigmatic illusionist known only as Conundrum, and Quentin's admiring cousin, Maguire Beck, who helped upgrade his abilities with her computer expertise. Maguire also aided Berkhart after he created his own version of the Jack-o'-lantern identity, Mad Jack. As a side note, while many people have used the Jack-o'-lantern costume, the original was Jason Philip Macendale, perhaps better known as the second Hobgoblin. As Mad Jack, Berkhart began tormenting the Jameson family as revenge for Jonah abandoning him to rot in jail. As a way of honing her craft, Maguire Beck provided technical support behind the scenes, and Berkhart communicated with her through a radio receiver in a robotic cat. Throughout all of this, Maguire expected to later join forces with her cousin on a full-time basis. However, it seemed she would not get that chance as Quentin was supposedly diagnosed with terminal cancer. He wanted to go out with a bang, but the last time he'd encountered Spider-Man, it wasn't his old enemy, but someone else who had taken over the identity. Mysterio didn't want to reach his epic conclusion fighting a clone, but he had recently battled another masked vigilante, the man without fear known as Daredevil. He assessed that Daredevil was a second stringer with notoriety similar to himself and thus would make an appropriate target. At this point in time, the kingpin of crime, Wilson Fisk, had lost his criminal empire but still had plenty of sensitive information. And so Beck was able to pay off Fisk to learn everything there was to know about Daredevil, including his secret identity of Matthew Murdock. Mysterio began a devious campaign attempting to drive Murdock mad, even going so far as to have the assassin Bullseye, potentially Daredevil's deadliest opponent, murder his beloved Karen Page. All of this was done so that Murdock would snap and kill Mysterio, but Daredevil refused to cross that line, not allowing Beck's mind games to break him. In the end, Mysterio seemingly turned a gun on himself and took his own life. In the wake of this, Daniel Berkhart once again took up the mantle of Mysterio, leaving the Jack-o'-lantern costume to Maguire, who was devastated by her cousin's apparent suicide. Maguire Beck became Mad Jack herself and began a campaign of revenge against everyone she believed had wronged or humiliated Quentin, including J. Jonah Jameson, Betsy Schneider, Joe Smith, And of course, Spider-Man and Daredevil. Naturally, the two heroes defeated Maguire Beck, and the true identity of Mad Jack was finally exposed. Evidently, Berkhart also aided Beck with this plot from behind the scenes, but was able to obscure his involvement and escape without being discovered. Berkhart wasn't the only one to use Mysterio's identity after his death, as another man, Francis Klum, also obtained one of his costumes. A mutant with teleportation and limited mind control abilities, Francis was drawn into a life of crime by his abusive older brother, Garrison. When their criminal enterprise was investigated by Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat, Garrison drugged her and intended to assault her. However, Francis intervened by teleporting himself into his brother's body, exploding him from the inside out. Francis escaped before the police arrived, leaving Felicia to be arrested for Garrison's murder and imprisoned on Rikers Island. Spider-Man convinced Daredevil to help him free the Black Cat, but when they arrived at the prison, Klum was already there. Klum then used his mental powers to make the two vigilantes attack each other while he teleported away with Felicia. Atop the Queensboro Bridge, Francis and Felicia had a heart-to-heart talk about their past traumas. The cat had nearly convinced Klum to turn himself in to the police, but an enraged Spider-Man rushed in, mistakenly thinking that Francis was going to murder Felicia to cover up his involvement in Garrison's death. This only caused Klum to actually become violent, teleporting a gun into his hand. Spider-Man was able to cover the firearm in webbing, but the kickback from the covered gun being fired knocked Klum back, making him fall from the top of the bridge. The Black Cat and Spider-Man attempted to save him, but Klum teleported away mid-fall, his landing elsewhere causing severe injuries and scarring. Klum then bought Mysterio's costume and equipment from Wilson Fisk, who was still in the midst of rebuilding his criminal empire, intending to use Beck's identity to get revenge on Spider-Man. Fisk himself claims the gear once belonged to Jack-O-Lantern, so one can assume it was obtained from Maguire Beck. Then, when Spider-Man's identity as high school teacher Peter Parker was publicly revealed during the superhero Civil War, Klum, as Mysterio, attacked the school seeking revenge. This drew the attention of Daniel Berkhart, who arrived to investigate the appearance of a second Mysterio, which of course led to a confrontation between the two men. However, it seems events were also being manipulated by the appearance of a third demonic Mysterio, who appeared to be a resurrected Quentin Beck. Claiming to have returned as an undead specter, Beck removed his helmet, revealing the damage caused by his self-inflicted wound to the school nurse, Miss Arrow. Furthermore, Arrow had another identity of her own, as she was secretly the dangerous spider creature known as the Other. Beck seemed to know that Arrow was more than she seemed, and so when she stabbed Klum, fatally wounding him, it's entirely possible that this is exactly what Beck wanted. Meanwhile, Berkhart was defeated by Spider-Man and arrested, leaving only one Mysterio once again. Beck eventually resurfaced alive and well, with the implication that his death and resurrection were simply lies and illusions. Quentin Beck, the original Mysterio, remains a formidable member of Spider-Man's rogues gallery. He has even menaced more than one reality, as the Mysterio seen in the Ultimate Universe was simply an android avatar puppeted by the Quentin Beck of the Prime Marvel Universe. As for whatever happened to Daniel Berkhart and Maguire Beck, another man calling himself the Jack-O-Lantern claimed to have killed every other person to use that identity. While this claim is unconfirmed, it would imply that both Berkhart and Maguire Beck were killed, as they both wore the Jack-O-Lantern costume as Mad Jack. But that is the history of Mysterio, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, share the video, and subscribe for more marvelous content. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what Marvel hero or villain you want to hear about next, and as always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page, where for only $1 a month you can get your name in these special thanks here. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!